Welcome back. We are here at the People's Convention with Tyler Bowyer, COO of Turning Point Action. How are you, Tyler?
Excited to be here with you guys. Excited that you're here in such a big way.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. So tell us about this event in Detroit, why we picked it here, how's it going so far? Just your thoughts on day two.
So Detroit is such an important place because obviously there's only a certain amount of states that matter when it comes to the presidential election. So the left has been targeting 6 states that we know: Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Nevada.
Yep.
Those are the states that are flippable, that can go back and forth. And so when you look at the map and you say, okay, how do things look for the Republicans? You know, Georgia seems to be shifting more to our column. Nevada is statistically one of the lower end because it just has less electoral college votes.
Right.
So that leaves you with the last 4 states. Wisconsin has the RNC convention happening in it. We're home based as Turning Point Action in Arizona, my home state.
Yep.
And then you've got Pennsylvania, which is just a huge state. It's really like multiple states in one. And then you got Michigan, right? And so you can make the argument on that list that Michigan is now the 3rd most important state in the country.
Yeah. Coincidentally, AMAC, we were just in Bucks County, Pennsylvania for one of our boot camp for boomers. You know, it's going to be a tight race there. It's going to be hugely influential. Speaking on that, when it comes to getting out the vote those states, you've been heavily focused on precinct strategy, especially with the youth when it comes to the precinct strategy. It's interesting because what you find out, most people who are involved in the party, they're not really familiar with how the party works.
Yeah, exactly.
Precinct committeemen, voting upwards. Can you just briefly summarize what precinct strategy is and why Turning Point has focused on that?
Yeah, I mean, the precinct level is where everything operates, and
right.
that's because that's where you win and lose elections, right? So if you can win each precinct, you can win the election. And that matters because it's really a bottom-up approach.
Right.
When you look at how do I win a school board race? Well, you got to win each precinct in that school board jurisdiction. So our focus has been identify the most important precincts, mainly because the data there shows who did and did not show up for the election in 2020 and 2016. Our team has been focused on what we call a low propensity vote. We call them disengaged voters, where people that were registered to vote ahead of 16, ahead of 20, but for whatever reason decided not to vote.
Right.
So when you break that down at the precinct level, it starts to paint a picture. It starts to paint a demographic picture, and then not demographics only around race and religion, but also gender, so moms, individuals who are also in the nursing and healthcare industries, those that teach. You start to figure out, okay, well, are there things that are happening that jive together in certain precincts? And then we can look at the larger map and say, where do we need to recruit the right people for those precincts to chase those ballots?
Absolutely.
And so that's where kind of our Chase the Vote initiative was born, when we realized the Republican Party as I call it the Republican apparatus, because it's not just the RNC, it's the RNC, NRSC, NRCC, all the big PACs that are out there that have existed for decades, hadn't done a good enough job at targeting those voters by precinct. So that's been our strategy, is break down the precincts, figure out who's there, who's missing, recruit the right activists in those precincts, really no matter what age they are, no matter what gender they are, as long as it fit with what was missing there, and then put people full-time in those precincts to be able to chase the vote.
Oh, so you are putting people full-time in those precincts. To go back to that, we really are at a disadvantage in comparison to, the Democrat Party.
Yep.
The tooling on the back, the databases that get out the vote, software infrastructure, the tooling,
Yep.
as we say, behind it. Can you speak briefly to that? You just mentioned it, putting people in precincts, but on the data side, is there anything you're specifically doing that people might be interested in to get out the vote, address voters, segment audiences, things like that?
Well, I always tell people, I use the analogy that data is a lot like eggs.
Okay.
Not very many people eat raw eggs. Some people do.
Yeah.
But not many. Not many people consume raw eggs. But you use eggs, you can scramble them, you can fry them, I like mine over easy in the morning. You can put them in a cake and make a chocolate cake out of eggs. data, for the most part, is the same on the left and the right.
Right. Without effectively using it, it's kind of worthless.
That's right.
Until you cook with it.
Unless you make a chocolate cake out of it.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's really, that's where the tools come in. That's where the ease of use and the access to it comes in. We're trying to bake a chocolate cake during early voting. We're trying to bake a chocolate cake so that more people have access and enjoy the data, are able to use the data, and it's more of a utility than just, now we're reviewing the data on the back end, now we learn things, months after the election.
Yeah, that's worthless. You haven't used it effectively.
It's like eating raw eggs. And so, for us, and it's eating, in some cases in the Republican Party, spoiled old raw eggs.
Yeah, useless, basically.
So for us, it's been look at the data, but build the tools quickly. I'm a point blank person. A lot of people who have been in this space for years and decades haven't adequately built the tools to bake that cake, right?
And that's something you see on the Democrat Party is once you're in the fold, you're sort of forced into this system to use, which is to their advantage, where it seems on our end there's a lot of political infighting on what to use. In the same fashion, mail-in ballots versus day of election voting, and there's a lot of infighting going on. So can you kind of just give a little perspective on that, your thoughts on day of voting, election day voting, holy day voting versus the mail-in ballot situation?
Well, yeah, when you understand voting, it's not just there's not two ways to vote, right? There's actually more like 10 ways to vote in most states.
Yeah.
And that breaks down to, day of drop-offs, early voting in person, early voting by mail, absentee ballots, excuse, no excuse, if UOCAVA votes, which are uniform officer overseas votes. There's lots of different ways to vote. It's not just one or the other. And the left has really made a push to make it more easy to vote.
Well, easy, right.
Meaning flooding the space with ballots so that they can manipulate the vote.
Right.
So, there's kind of, oftentimes you hear two sides, which is, we only want day of, which is like the really old way of doing things. Arizona for a long time has had mail-in voting, no excuse mail-in voting. And then there's the people who are pushing on the left, basically like vote by email, right? Which is like what they want.
For 6 months before the election.
And the reality,
we never end elections, actually. It's just always an election season. So.
And, one of the things that we've discussed frequently with people is I'm not a fan of early voting at all and ways that allow people to manipulate your vote. Any way that we allow that is bad. There has to be lockdown. Florida has I think a really fair model, which is excuse only, absenteeism, just for a few weeks beforehand, and then you have to vote on election day.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty fair strategy. I think that would be great to model. The Democrats hate that, by the way. The left hates that because they can't manipulate it, and now that's why they've completely abandoned Florida. But not enough Republicans are talking about that because they're so focused on the actual machinery that's around it, which is fair because a lot of this is bad. So the thing that we talk about is like there's really a halfway in between. We can't just sit on our heels and say we're not going to participate with the election because the laws are bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're not going to tell people like, oh, these laws are good, and support them, right?
It's a difficult position to be in because you really want day of voting. You really want a proper way of doing it. But if there's laws in the books, as Lee Zeldin recently said, you can't just disregard them and you have to engage in the same sort of practices, which Republicans, we always seem to take the high road in every fashion.
Yeah.
It's like we get nuked and we never return fire, so there's no, mutual destruction potential there.
Yeah.
It's just consistently one-sided.
Well, and I use an analogy for it. I don't know if you've ever seen speed cameras or things like that. You have them in your neighborhood. My city has speed and red light cameras. I hate them.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop driving.
Right.
I have to still get out on the road and go to work. I avoid speed cameras. I avoid red light cameras.
Yeah.
That's the best that I can do. But I'm not going to stop driving, or I'm not going to just like speed through every red light, to just be like, oh, I hate you, and just rack up all these tickets. So I'm going to do what I can for public policy's sake to try to get them removed in my state.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to stop driving while that happens.
Play the rules of the game as they exist right now.
So
and,
so there's a world that exists where it's like you can hate how it operates, you can dislike how it operates, you can want to change it, while still trying to do our best to work within the confines of that.
Absolutely. So before we let you go, give us our perspective in the next 3 months. What are you specifically focused on, from a Turning Point Action perspective? Is it get out the vote? Is it the precinct strategy? Is it changing the party from within? I don't want you to give away too much, but what's sort of your focus as COO?
Yeah, so everything that we're here, right? So we're talking about chase the vote. So you're seeing on all the walls, chase the vote, chase the vote, chase the vote. We're hiring full-time people in Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, focusing on those states, focusing on Georgia as well with volunteerism. So there's twofold to that.
Yep.
You have your volunteerism side where we're doing what we call super chase events, which you'll be seeing a ton of starting this summer all the way through October. And then on the other side of that is the full-time bodies. We have to have full-time bodies that are chasing ballots. Identifying those people in the precincts.
So you have people knocking on doors, literally knocking on doors.
Yeah, we already have hundreds of people hired in Arizona that are right now working on that. Some of them are here.
Hopefully in Maricopa.
Yeah, largely in Maricopa. So majority in Maricopa because that's where the votes are.
Yeah.
So we're identifying those precincts, putting full-time bodies in those precincts, supplementing that with volunteerism. So I'm telling everybody, if you want a job with us, go to tpaction.com/careers. We'll hire you. It's everybody of all ages. People look at Turning Point, they think youth, right?
Absolutely.
Because of Turning Point USA, but that's not true with Turning Point Action. It's everybody, right? We're working with everybody of all ages.
Including AMAC.
Including
America's
our
largest conservative seniors
boot camp
organization.
Boomers, right?
That's right.
So we're working with everybody, and we're identifying the places and putting the people in the places, training them, and they're building relationships now so that when October rolls around, we're more likely to get more doors open to get those votes out. We need hundreds of thousands of additional votes turned in from people who didn't vote in 2020 and 2016.
And when you're talking about margins in the 10s, 20s, 50s of thousands in particular states, that's going to matter hugely.
It could be dozens of votes, like we saw in Arizona with the Attorney General race, where it's, 280 votes, right?
Yep.
So with Abe Hamadeh, so every vote matters. If we would have just had one of our people on the ground, Abe Hamadeh would have won even with all the things that we think that they're not counting and messing around with in Arizona. So it's really important. And so we need everybody there. But also, if you can't take a full-time job, you're retired and you're not wanting to do anything else, come volunteer with us. Take vacation, plan a vacation to Arizona or Wisconsin or Michigan in October. We will dispatch people. We will get them out, and using our application makes it really easy because the Turning Point Action application, you press go, and it opens up the door for people to go out.
Great. In closing, do you want to tell people how they can get that app, how they can get engaged?
Yeah, just right on the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, download Turning Point Actions application. You press the tab in the top left-hand corner, input your cell phone number, and you're ready to go start knocking doors.
Awesome. Tyler Bowyer, COO of Turning Point, thank you so much for taking the time, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you for having me, Charlie.
Appreciate it.